Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Cooperative Football, in English, COPERACHA Football, broadcasting live from Pilsen, Chicago. I'm here to talk about what Alex and I had discussed on Saturday night, but due to technical difficulties, we couldn't finish the show. Um, those things are the English Premier League, La Liga in Spain, and the Italian Serie A, as well as Bundesliga briefly. Uh, we talked about the intentions of these leagues to restart their respective tournaments ASAP, as soon as possible. Then there's a counterpart in France, Netherlands, and Belgium. To mention one of the so-called European big leagues, in France, Ligue 1 or Ligue 1, they followed the example of the Eredivisie and the European First Division A, and decided to abandon the 1920-2020 season. They chose to finish their rest of the games. They actually played it the rest of the season on a thing called the Index. What's the name of it again? Let's see. It's called a performance index. This performance index takes into account the number of points and the games played to determine the ties. They took the specific one-on-one confrontations from the first half of the season, where they played each other. This performance index is very similar to the good old power ranking, which is, the classification in France ended up this way. On first place, surprise, surprise, PSG ended up winning the championship for the 9th consecutive time. Good for them. In second place, and with a direct place into next year's Champions League group stage, Olympique Marseille. The third place was Stade Rennais. They will go to the Champions League qualifying playoffs. Meanwhile, the fourth place, Lille, they will go to the Europa League. The last two places that went into relegation when the 19th place, Amiens, and the historic team Toulouse, who ended up 20th in last place. The champion PSG decided to dedicate their brand new title, for the transition, to the healthcare personnel. All of the everyday heroes of the front line of the public service. For instance, Nasser Al-Khelaifi, the head of the Qatar project in France, praised the health workers, saying that their commitment and sacrifice over many weeks have, what did he say, have earned his deepest admiration. He also said this: "We understand, respect, and support the decision made by the French government to end the championship. Health, as the government has always said, must be the most important priority. In these difficult times, I hope this trophy brings a little happiness and hope to all of our supporters, and I thank them for their unbreakable support that helps Paris Saint-Germain. Contrary to the personal opinion of the president of the FIFA Medical Committee, Michael Duog, he said earlier during the past days that football should not be played before September. Contrary to that, the president of the European Football Leagues, Lars Christer Olsen, believes that each country should evaluate whether the possibility of ending its league according to the development of the pandemic virus in each territory. He has also said that he wants European competitions to be able to come to an end, quote unquote, if possible. Uh, he further added that if there's an opportunity for a country to end its competition, that would allow it to guarantee the integrity of domestic competition and the integrity of the international competitions, because its clubs could be classified according to sporting merits. He is indirectly criticizing the decision of League One and the rest of the competitions that decided to abandon their respective tournaments. Uh, he also said, I could imagine that this season would end, but I could not imagine that the next one could not begin, he said. He also believes that the calendars for the next campaigns will be a problem because this crisis will affect in so many ways all of the calendars of the next 2 or 3 years to come. Isn't it more logical to wait for the start of a new tournament rather than planning the conclusion of the previous one? If you're rushing to finish the tournament, because of this rush, you are putting, or you could ignore compliance with the health and safety guidance. Um, that only means that people's lives could be at risk, and all of that just to save the club's finances. Um, is it worth it? I ask myself and ask you. But all of this leads us to the English Premier League. They have announced their sole intention of. Oh no, sorry, I put the wrong slide. They have announced their intentions to complete their current competition. Um, the league is already, it's ready to play again and finally finish the total of 92 remaining games of the 2019-2020 season. They say they would do it as long as it is safe and appropriate to do so. After the video conference that was held on Friday included the 20 teams of Premier League, there was no agreement whatsoever of when or where the competition would restart, although several scenarios were put on the table. There is a meeting scheduled for the following June the 13th, and they are planning to tell the teams how to get back into competition. Their plan, according to sources, will be called the Project Restarting. But UEFA is requiring that this deadline should be all of the deadline for the league's plans should be done by May the 25th. So that puts into perspective how the timelines are not working right between UEFA and Premier League, because they're weeks apart of their decision in UEFA. Why? The question is, what's gonna happen in England? Why did this meeting get scheduled to or why did this meeting was set after the UEFA deadline? I don't understand. It's a really weird determination. At this point, it seems almost impossible to play 92 games in such a short period of time, even at neutral venues, to be honest. Those measures could have serious consequences in the players' health, increasing the risk of exposure amongst each other, which seems logical because, due to the pandemic, it's a highly contagious virus, and the nature of the sport, is very physical. Let's remember that football, it's a sport where physical contact is imperative. Uh, Sweat, saliva, and the risk of bleeding. Potentially, some blood can be exposed to referees, players, technical and medical personnel. Um, from a commercial perspective, one report says that abandoning the rest of the season could cost the Premier League 1,137 million pounds in losses, of which 762 million are linked to television broadcast contracts. However, one of the Premier League's flagship players, Sergio El Kun Agüero, confessed himself to be a little scared to go back into the field without the appropriate security to do so. He told a television channel in Spain that most of the players are afraid because they have family, they have children, they have babies. Kun Agüero is not the only one who feels this way. For example, Glenn Murray of Brighton said football should not be put into unnecessary pressure. They should not put pressure unnecessary onto the emergency services. And the statement from the Association of Football Fans in England released a statement saying, health comes first. So, the consensus is that fans are not very optimistic about the resumption of the Premier League if the protocols standards do not meet the necessary health guidelines. The leagues in Germany, Italy, and Spain are very ready to end up playing their respective unfinished competitions. In Germany, 2 players and a physical therapist tested positive for coronavirus at FC Köln. None of the 3 people diagnosed with COVID-19 presented any symptoms, but the same way, and according to the protocols, they were sent home for a period of 2 weeks as self-isolation. The club did not reveal the entity. The identity of. The club did not reveal the identity of the 3 people. And they say they are convinced, and Bundesliga, the head of the task force, what is it called? The head of the COVID-19 force task group, okay, one second. Dr. Tim Meyer, he said that his plan recognizes and reduces risk early than most people do. Additionally, he said we are in constant communication with responsible health officials and medical staff. He said we are convinced that with our concept we can make it possible. Okay. Additionally, we are in constant communication with the responsible health officials and medical experts. We are convinced that with our concept, we can make a possible that players can practice their professional under the maximum protection against infection. In Italy, the president of the league, Paolo Dalpino, said, Paolo Dalpino, he said that he was open to dialogue from a constructive and collaborative perspective. That way, I mean, with the government, that way, from that perspective, he obtained the full agreement of all 20 clubs of Serie A. Paolo Del Pino argued that they're complying with the required health requirements. His plan, or part of his plan, is to have 3 types of tests for everyone involved in the game, from security to medical personnel to media spaces, press spaces, and the players, obviously. Also, sanitizing everything will be part of the protocol. Separate training sessions and other precautions will be taken. The president of the Emilia-Romagna region in the northeast of Italy, his name is Stefano Bonaccini, he agreed to allow professional athletes to train individually in the open. And all of this in accordance to the social distancing rules. No meetings are allowed in enclosed door structures. He gave permission to the local clubs Bologna, Parma, Spal, and Sassuolo to resume training in sports centers, starting on Sunday, May the 4th, which means tomorrow, if the clubs consider it pertinent. All of this assuming that there will be no meetings at all between staff members or players inside enclosed doors. Therefore, players who are training outdoors cannot pass the ball to each other, because that means they would be breaking the rules of social distancing. So, actually, restarting the season would violate those rules, given that during the game, the soccer ball or the football has to be played amid and confronted amid so many multiple players, a countless number of times during the game again. The president of the Federazione Italiana Gioco Calcio, Gabriele Gravina, he said, "I will never write my signature to declare any tournament abandoned or void as long as I remain the president of the Italian Football Federation," because he argues that doing so would kill Italian calcio due to financial repercussions. Gabriele Gravina, he predicted losses in the Italian football of more than 800 million euros in TV rights, tickets, marketing, and sponsors for Serie A alone. And according to him, the cancellation of and or abandonment of the 2019-2020 Serie A competition could only be directly imposed by governmental laws. That means he would not be willing to, by no means, declare the season over unless the government says so. It is worth mentioning that the Italian calcio, including Serie A, Serie B, and the national team, the Azzurri, they generate a total of $5.45 billion a year. And 2,094 billions or millions of that is generated by the Italian Serie A alone. The Italian league itself employs directly a total of 150,000 people, and therefore it becomes a little bit of a national problem. And with that said, the government receives $1.42 billion of Serie A in taxes annually. That is probably the reason why people involved in Italian football and the Italian economy involved in football, they want to return as soon as possible, due to what money represents for football institutions, as well as any other aspect of life. Honestly, money. A recent survey was carried out, and it showed that 2 out of 3 Italians would be in favor of abandoning the league, particularly in the epicenter of infections that arose in the north of the country, where Inter Milan, Juventus, Atalanta, and AC Milan are located. And the next meeting of the Italian Federazione Gioco Calcio will be on May the 8th. This meeting could be decisive. And meanwhile, in Spain, La Liga are in the same boat as the English, German, and Italian. They are all eager to reactivate all football activities like a simple light switch, despite the risk of infection amongst the players and everybody involved in the game. As a fan of Barcelona myself, I would rather have La Liga declaring the tournament nil and does whatever it takes with the league title. Who cares? I prefer that option instead of risking the health and therefore the lives of the players and staff of our club. And to be clear, none of the countries, none of the ones mentioned today until now, none of them meet the guidelines of 14 days of continuous decline in the cases of COVID-19. So, only communities that meet these standards of decreasing on cases can eventually reopen their social distancing and reopen semi-essential establishments, etc. However, all the European leagues want European players and community players. They want all the players to sign an agreement to expose not only themselves, but indirectly they would do so with their families and could potentially expose hundreds of thousands of people to the virus. On the other hand, setting a good example, in Belgium, wait for the nation, in Belgium, in the Netherlands, and in France, but they made decisions more closer to the human rights. In the Eredivisie, they canceled the championship, leaving the classification as it dated on March 8th of 2020 as the final one. Despite the fact that Ajax was leader and they were first place, they didn't win the championship. There was no promotion or relegation between the Eredivisie and the Eerste Divisie. European places were assigned in this league according to the ranking of March 8th, when the championship was indefinitely postponed. The Champions League qualifying places for next tournament contest correspond to Ajax and AZ Alkmaar. And the Europa League positions go to Feyenoord, PSV, and Willem second. In the Belgian First Division A, the championship was contested by 12 teams, and FC Bruges won the championship. However, it's unclear, and for unknown reasons, the Legentois, that team was not relegated to promotion division. From a personal point of view, the leagues that have decided well are the French, the Dutch, and the Belgian. These leagues, in my opinion, decided right because they put their humanistic interests before their monetary interests. And the big European leagues like the Premier League, I said it again, the Bundesliga, La Liga, and the Serie A Calcio are making a mistake and are almost violating the civil rights of their players. Fortunately, at the end of the day, the player associations around Europe are the ones that have the last word on this case. And as I said before, I could be a football madman or crazy, but from my point of view, and I hope from all of your point of views too, no soccer game, no football game or tournament is worth risking one more life. Particularly if this means we're risking the lives of those who play our beloved game. You know, the players. We hope that football can return at some point, but we should not rush anything. We should not rush things. Now more than ever, we have to make better decisions as human beings for human beings. Thanks a lot for your time. Stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like us, and share us with the people you love the most. Thank you so much. I'll leave you with some music. And till the next time, be safe.